Hi everyone, it's Nicole. Welcome back to my channel and another paper crafting video tutorial. Today is all about creating cute critters scene cards with the My Favorite Things February 2024 release. Today we're going to be featuring from the release the brand new You Make Me So Happy, the essential birthday messages, and the greatest present stamp sets and coordinating dies for those two critter sets. Now critters, yes, but also scene cards are one of my most favorite things to create and have been for years. And it's been fun to kind of get back to creating some of these scene cards that I love and I know you guys love as well. Using the Altenew stamp wheel, I have pulled some previously released My Favorite Things products from my stash to use with these new stamps today. Starting with the Drifts and Hills stencil and some Rustic Wilderness Distress Oxide ink, I am going to ink up some hills along the bottom edge of my panel. I will be doing this for both backgrounds, and yes, I am using some Craft or Desert Storm as it's called cardstock here, so we have a very beautiful neutral background. That is because I am going to be coloring my images on the Desert Storm cardstock, and I think it looks amazing. Now you might think clouds on Craft, is that going to work? Once we have everything in place, I think you're going to see how amazing this is going to look. Using the Picket Fence paper pouncer here, I am pouncing on some white pigment ink using the My Favorite Things Rolling Clouds stencil. I love this because it's not straight across clouds and it gives a little bit more movement, but let's be honest, I haven't met a cloud stencil I don't like, so I love all of the cloud stencils. Grab your favorites. After I've pounced on those clouds, I am going to carefully remove this and do this for the other background. Now, even though I am creating the same background for both of these cards, each of them will feature a different stamp set. So pick your favorites and just have fun. I often love to do this where I either use the same components and create different backgrounds or the same backgrounds and different components. And it really does kind of help eliminate having to come up with a brand new idea for each and every card. This kind of background is going to work for many of your different types of scene cards out there, maybe things that you even already have on hand. And in fact, more than likely, things you do already have on hand. So even if you don't have these new products, hopefully this video inspires you to grab your favorite images and image stamp sets and create some fun backgrounds and scene cards. Once I have both of these backgrounds stenciled, we are going to do a little all over background stamping. Now, if you are new here, this is something kind of one of my go-to techniques, one of those things that I absolutely love and do all of the time because I think it adds just a little something to a card. So we're going to take the happy birthday background from My Favorite Things and we are going to stamp this all over the background using that same white pigment ink. It adds a subtle text background all over the design. I knew when I was starting these cards that I would be making both of them birthday themed cards, so this is a fantastic background for that. However, it is a background stamp and not the focal point, so even if you don't have this exact text background, grab something that you have because it more creates the fantastic illusion of text than reading what it actually says, I guess, if that makes sense. I ink up both of these at the same time, and I did remove the insert from my MISTI because I'm using this red rubber cling stamp. A sticky mat in your MISTI helps hold your cardstock in place. Now that we have both of our backgrounds, I am going to stamp all of my images from the two stamp sets that I am using. And again, that is the Greatest Present and You make moo so happy. So obviously the moo one is the cows, and the cute mouse and birds and presents is from the Greatest Present stamp set. I've stamped all of these images on another piece of the Nina Desert Storm cardstock using Hero Art's intensified black ink. We will be coloring everything in with Olo marker today. So I'm zooming in for the coloring portion, and I have listed all of my color combinations down in the description below the video here on YouTube, as well as over on my blog. I have been using Olo markers for a little over a year now, almost exclusively, and I absolutely love them. When you're using Olo markers, one of the differences between those and other alcohol ink markers is you don't want to pull the cap off and on constantly like you might be used to. You want to, when you're blending. So you might want to leave those caps off. Now, I still have trouble remembering this from time to time, but I am working to make that more of a habit when I'm coloring. And the reason being is that suction motion pulls the ink to the surface or the tip of the marker. And you don't want it to kind of blob out onto your card or project. You'll notice that I'll leave the caps off of my markers throughout the video when coloring certain things. So even if I set a marker down, when I go to pull another one, I might leave the marker cap off. Now, some of that might be out of frame of the camera, as I did zoom in closely to show off the coloring a little bit closer up for you guys. Now, one thing that I didn't stamp, but I do off camera near the end of the video, I did end up stamping the third, what I'm calling a sunflower, from the cow stamp set, You Make Moo So Happy, because as I laid out all of my images, I noticed that I felt like it was a little lopsided and it needed that third flower to just really create that visual interest. Kind of that odd number thing that we talk about a lot in creating card making or scrapbooking or whatever it might be. So I do that off camera, but that's one of those things as you start to assemble a project and you actually see it on your card, you're going to say, here is the whole, here is what I'm missing, and you can always go back and add extra things. I'm using two different brown color combinations today. You'll notice the fence is a little, what I would call brighter. My cow is a little bit more muted, and that was definitely on purpose. I didn't want them to be the same color. They will be sitting next to each other on the card. When you're coloring on the Desert Storm cardstock, it is going to go on kind of dark, and also certain things may look kind of light. So the light reds I'm using for the cow, the yellows I used for the sunflower, those you might think it just looks like you're wetting the paper, but as those colors dry, and alcohol ink markers do dry quickly, you are going to notice your images really start to pop, and it just creates a completely different look than coloring on white. It's something I have been playing around with a lot, probably over the last year, and I can't get enough of it. I love the different look that it provides. You're coloring on a colored cardstock, but it's not so dark that you lose all detail, which I love. It probably wouldn't work on, a darker type of cardstock, but on craft, it just is so beautiful. Definitely give it a try if you haven't already. I have heard from a lot of you that you really love this effect, and I love hearing that you guys are giving it a try and enjoying the results. When coloring with your markers, you have a couple of ways of doing it. You'll notice that I have flip-flopped between a couple of different ways, and that means in a couple of areas, I've done an all-over light kind of base, if you will, and then gone in with my darker colors and blended them out. You can also start with your dark marker and then blend out and shade with kind of going from dark to light. So either light to dark or dark to light. I tend to do both. When I was taught coloring with alcohol ink markers, it was the light to dark and then coming back the other way. I have found if you start with the darks, especially with these Olo markers, and then go to light, a lot of times you don't have to go back and shade extra. And I love that. Now for critters, I do find oftentimes I do, just because I see things I missed or things I want to fix. On the cows, I went back in with the tip of my marker and did that feathering to give the hair a little bit, or fur, whatever, I guess it's hair, a little bit more of that hair-like texture without being blended out too much, but it's really personal preference. Now for my birds, I usually do a yellow for the underbelly of my little aqua birds, no matter what brand I'm coloring. And these guys, I started with pink, thinking, oh, that is going to be okay. I did not love it. I did not want to restamp them. So as that color dried, I actually went back in and added a little yellow over the top. So it is a blend of pink and yellow, but it made it so that I actually like the color of the birds, where before I thought, oh no, I made a huge mistake. So sometimes that happens, and don't be afraid to go in and adjust, or at least try to adjust before restamping. You'll notice that as I'm coloring, I'm trying to color anything that's red all at the same time, anything that is yellow at the same time, purple, etc. It doesn't always work, but I did do my best, simply because as I had the markers out, and I mentioned earlier, I like to keep those caps off of the markers as I'm working, and that way I don't have so many caps off of my markers all at one time. Now I accidentally pulled the wrong blue shading marker, So Light. I was like, oh, that's never going to blend out. And then I picked the next one and I'm like, oh, that's too light too. So I ended up having to go back to my bag of tricks, or bag of markers, and find one a little bit closer to that initial color to blend out. That's totally fine. I know it looks wet right now. It is very saturated. I'm going to move over and color in a balloon, and I'll come back to that present in a minute. One thing I love to do with presents is create some texture with stripes, polka dots, things like that, and we will be doing that for that present. So I'm just doing some little stripes so that it looks like it's a stripe wrapping paper. We only have a couple things left. We have Mr. Mouse and then our last present. I love pops of red, especially, well, I shouldn't say especially, but I was going to say especially on the Desert Storm cardstock, but really it's on anything. I think red is a fantastic, bold statement. And here in all of the embellishments, it makes such a lovely effect and really draws your eye into the scene. I had thought about coloring the mouse in the fence color, but because I wanted the underbelly of the mouse and kind of part of the face to be lighter, I went ahead and went with the same color combination as the cows. It really makes no difference. These images are not on the same cards. So everything on the top of this panel is on one card, everything on the bottom is on the second card. They don't really intermix. So I did have to remind myself of that because I'm doing two cards at once here. Very assembly line style crafting, where I did all my backgrounds and now I am coloring everything in. Now I did forget to do the bandana around the cow, and I did a black and white, and I was like, that doesn't show up. So here's another example of coloring over the top of that light gray with red, and I think that's really cute. I die cut all of my images with the coordinating My Favorite Things, You Make Moo So Happy, and Greatest Present dies, and now I'm going to stamp my backgrounds. I have given my backgrounds plenty of time to dry. Remember, pigment ink and Distress Oxide, they do take a little bit longer to air dry, and that is important because I want to stamp over them with clear embossing ink and heat emboss with white embossing powder. You might notice that I cut apart this greeting from "You Make Moo So Happy" as well, so that it fits the design of my card. That's totally a preference. You could just stamp it in a couple of times, masking off the part you don't want to stamp. But I find it's easier for me usually to cut them apart, and you can fit them back together if you want them in a straight line very easily. The larger greeting is from the Essential Birthday Messages stamp set, and that's down along the bottom edge of the card. And then the smaller greeting that's from the same or coordinating stamp set as the images used on the card comes from either "You Make Moo So Happy" or the Greatest Present. Forgot there for just a second. So very similar in design, just kind of different greetings on each. And I made it so that the essential greetings worked with the other greeting I picked for the card. I prepped each background with a powder tool, stamped it with embossing ink, and heat embossed with white embossing powder. I love the white. It ties into the white clouds, the white text stamping, but still with that embossing is really bold and looks fantastic and doesn't detract or take away from the design. Next, I am taking white gel pens and black gel pens and decorating my images. So not over highlighting, but the balloons for sure I wanted highlights. I also want to add detail to the eyes. I think maybe this cow is the only one that I needed to do that to. But we're going to go through and add that detail, and you will see near the end that I will add black detail to the nails in the fence, as I decided not to color those with my Olo markers, but instead use my black Jelly Roll pen for detail. All of the images, for the most part, maybe I glued something down. No, I think I popped up every single image on my two cards with foam adhesive. I love that little subtle dimension. I think I should buy stock in foam adhesive because it's one of my most used things. So here is my cow card. Remember I said I only did those two sunflowers, but I feel like I'm going to need another. That's because I used this one sunflower kind of tucked here back behind the cow on the right side, but see how the left side seems lopsided? I really feel like we need another sunflower over here, and when I add that final sunflower, I think you'll see that it looks so much better. I will come back and do that in a minute. I went ahead and adhered both scenes, applying all the foam adhesive and all of that good stuff. The balloon for the cow does hang off just a teeny tiny bit. That is a design element that is called grounding. It really just helps ground the image and make it feel like not everything is just floating in the center of the card. It doesn't necessarily with these, the clouds go off the edge of the card and things, but sometimes if you have elements just barely hang off the edge of the card, it gives the illusion that it's a part of an overall bigger scene, and I love to do that when I can. Also, design-wise, I felt like it kind of helped move your eye up because there isn't a lot in the upper part of that card. For the second card, we're also building another balloon scene. And this time we have the little mouse floating in the sky, and we're going to have a birdie flying up there above our greeting. But down below we have lots of fun little grass images, florals, mushrooms, all of that good stuff down along the bottom edge. Plus I picked a couple of presents. I just think it's so super sweet. Just want it to be nice and balanced. And I created a visual triangle with my elements on this one, on both of them actually. Now I went back to my Greatest Present stamp set and took some of the music notes from this set and some VersaFine ONYX black ink, and we are going to fill in. I just have an acrylic block, and I want to add to this so that it looks like the little birdies are singing happy birthday to the recipient. And then we're going to take the grass image. There's 2 grass images from this stamp set and our Rustic Wilderness Distress Oxide ink. And we are going to fill in some areas with grass. Now I could have used this on the other card as well. Don't be afraid to mix and match. I didn't, but I think that that would have been kind of cute too. I like the little texture this adds to the design. So you'll see me filling in all of these little areas with little tufts of grass here and there. So much fun. Now I see that I missed a couple of areas adding my white pin detail. So I am going to go in and do that really quick. I think I just forgot to do it here. And I also felt like my mushrooms needed a little something. I had gone in with my darker color of red and made some dots, but those did not show up. So I'm going to fill those in now with white and add some little white dots to cheeks and maybe a couple of highlights to the balloons and things. And also changed my flower centers to white instead of the black from the stamped line. That looks pretty good. I'm happy with this. I like the little music notes in the background. Here I've added that final sunflower to this card, but the sky on this one doesn't have quite as much going on. For this one, I grabbed my favorite heart embellishments, these little red clay hearts, added some dabs of glue with the glue press, and I am popping some hearts in place. I didn't feel the other card needed as much. More of the sky is filled in over there, and really, there just didn't seem to be a natural place to add anything like that, so I didn't. Now I am taking my black Jelly Roll pen and adding that detail to the fence and see how it makes that just pop. I love it. We're going to glue both of these backgrounds to white top fold card bases, and it's about this time I noticed that maybe my craft cardstock was not trimmed exactly to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inches. User error. Oops. It's barely off, not even an 1/8 of an inch off, maybe a 1/16. And so I moved the panel all the way up to the top of the card to that where it's scored. And see that little white down at the bottom? I am going to take that to my paper trimmer and we're just going to cut that off. Let's go ahead and check the other one to see. They were from the same half sheet of cardstock, and I guess I didn't look when I trimmed it to 4 1/4. So we are going to, it's not quite 5 1/2 is what I'm saying. So I will take my trimmer. I'm going to trim that up. I think it'll clean it up a little bit. It's not going to make it too tiny short. I think it'll be fine. And it really is just the tiniest little bit off the bottom, but that cleans it up perfectly. So I'm just making sure we don't want to cut off any of the card. And there we go. Thank you guys so much for joining me today for these 2 birthday theme scene cards featuring my favorite things February 2024 release products. The supplies I used to create my cards are listed and linked below the video here on YouTube. Thank you so much for joining me, and we'll see you next time. Thank you so much for joining me today for another paper crafting tutorial. I love being able to share with this incredible community of crafters. I want to give a huge shout out and special thank you to my amazing Patreon members. If you're interested in joining Patreon, please click the link in the description underneath the video here on YouTube. Patreon is a private community where you can support more of what I do. There is exclusive content, information, and behind-the-scenes content. Top-tier members will receive a handmade birthday card during your birthday month, access to D-Stash, and monthly exclusive lives, plus so much more. We would love to have you join our growing community. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to my channel, click the like button, and don't forget to hit the notification bell to always be notified when I have a new paper crafting video or I go live. Thank you so much for joining, and we'll see you next time.